Welcome to today's devotional message. You prayed, you fasted, you waited, and still, silence. Maybe this message is the sign you didn't know you needed. If these words meet you right where you are, like, share, and subscribe. It helps us reach more souls who need God's comfort. Comment below with your favorite Bible promise, or the one you're still holding on to in the waiting. Let's begin, and let His Word breathe new life into yours. You sit by the window, the rain a persistent, blurring veil pulled across the outside world. Each drop a tiny echo of the tears you haven't shed, or the silent prayers that seem to evaporate before they reach the ceiling. This watery distortion mirrors the blur of your own hope, the once sharp vision, now hazy and uncertain. The quiet of the room isn't peaceful. It feels heavy, thick with the density of unanswered questions and the sheer volume of silent prayers lifted countless times. You know this feeling intimately. You have been here before, perhaps in a stark hospital room where time stretched into an eternity, a lonely apartment where the walls seemed to close in, a tense meeting room where your future hung in the balance, or most often, simply within the four walls of your own weary, questioning heart. The season is different, the specific circumstances vary, but the feeling is achingly, undeniably familiar. The feeling of waiting. Waiting for a sign that hasn't materialized, for a breakthrough that remains stubbornly just beyond reach, for the fundamental shift you've pleaded for on your knees, sometimes with ragged breaths and silent sobs. Is it a financial burden that feels not just heavy, but crushing, a weight pressing down on your very ability to breathe freely, refusing to lift despite every calculated effort, every sacrifice? A relationship that sits in a painful, silent stalemate, or feels irreparably broken, a shattered reflection of what once was. A persistent health issue with no clear diagnosis, no promising prognosis, just the ongoing ache and uncertainty. A wilderness you wander without a map? Maybe it's a dream, placed deep within your spirit, like a tiny mustard seed of potential that seems perpetually out of reach, buried under layers of disappointment, delay, and the creeping frost of doubt. Or perhaps, and this is often the most isolating, it's simply a deep, pervasive loneliness that no one else seems to truly understand. A quiet void that echoes even in a crowded room, making you feel fundamentally disconnected. You find yourself checking your phone again, a compulsive reflex born of desperate hope, even though you know rationally there won't be the email that changes everything, the call delivering the life-altering good news, the message that signals the waiting is finally, blessedly over. The silence in this room doesn't just sit idly by. It screams, a deafening quiet that amplifies every fear and whispers insidious doubts into the vulnerable corners of your mind. Does God see this specific struggle, this particular pain? Does He truly care about this wound that feels so unique to me? Did He even hear you the 1,000th time you poured out your heart, or was it just wasted breath? You feel unseen, unheard, perhaps even forgotten in the grand, sweeping narrative of His divine plans. You look at others, or scroll through carefully curated lives online. Your answers seem to manifest with startling ease, whose doors seem to open without a prolonged, soul-trying struggle, and the comparison stings like salt in an open wound. A voice inside whispers, "Is there something fundamentally wrong with your faith? With the way you pray? Is it you? Are you somehow deficient, somehow less deserving, somehow the reason for this prolonged aching delay? This waiting room isn't merely a physical space, bounded by walls and windows and the scent of stale coffee. It's a state of the soul, a deep valley of profound vulnerability, where trust is tested to its very core, and the foundations of your belief feel profoundly rattled, perhaps even ready to crumble. But even in this echoing silence, amidst the rising tide of fear and the relentless onslaught of questions, deep down, a tiny, stubborn spark of hope refuses to be extinguished. It's a fragile memory of past faithfulness, like the faint glow of an oil lamp seen from afar. A quiet knowing that surfaces unbidden from somewhere beyond your weary thoughts, hinting that this silence might not be absence, but something else entirely. A sacred preparation you cannot yet see, a profound refining taking place within the hidden depths of your spirit. The wind taps the window, not like a demand, but like God's gentle whisper patiently waiting for your stillness amidst the storm raging around and within you. Sometimes God's clearest answers aren't shouted from the mountaintop of immediate deliverance or presented on a silver platter. They are discovered in the quiet, often painful valley of patient endurance. His silence is not denial or indifference. It is often active preparation, a sacred space where your faith learns to stand, not on shifting circumstances, which are always changing, but on the unchanging character of God Himself, who is the same yesterday, today, and forever. He is not withholding blessings out of stinginess. He is perhaps refining the vessel meant to receive them, building within you the spiritual muscles and resilience needed for what comes next, which is always greater than what is now. He's not asking for your perfect performance, your unwavering strength, or your complete understanding. He's just asking for your willingness to surrender your timeline for His, your limited sight for His infinite perspective. Trust is not the absence of fear or doubt. Oh no, it is walking forward in faith, even when fear and doubt are your closest, most vocal companions. This message is for you, specifically you, the one sitting in the waiting room, feeling invisible, wondering if the God of the universe remembers your name amidst the billions. He does. He absolutely does. The God who calls the countless stars by name, Psalm 147:4, knows intimately the silent ache of your singular heart. Can you lean into the quiet, trusting that even now, in the unseen moments, He is working, weaving a hidden tapestry of grace, beauty, and purpose? Can you choose belief, not because the storm has passed or the answer has arrived, but simply because you know the anchor holds firm, secured by the very nature of God? His strength is made perfect in your weakness, 2 Corinthians 12:9. His timing is perfect in your waiting. He doesn't need you to have all the answers for the journey, only to hold on to the hand of the one who is the way, the truth, and the life. Lean in. He remembers. Your name is etched on His heart. The silence stretches before you, vast and empty. You sit there, amidst the ruins of what you hoped would be, wondering if your prayer was even heard, if your earnest cries merely echoed back from the ceiling like forgotten sounds. The wind taps the window pane, a rhythm that sometimes feels like God's whisper, waiting for your stillness. But today, it just feels like another empty sound in a quiet house. This is the ache you know, isn't it? The slow, gnawing sickness that settles deep in your chest, in the very core of your being, when hope feels not just delayed, but actively denied. The Bible speaks of hope deferred making the heart sick, Proverbs 13:12. And you understand this sickness intimately. It's more than just disappointment. It's a spiritual weariness, a profound tiredness that sinks its roots into your soul when another deadline passes unmet. Another door that felt so certain slams shut. Or you watch someone else effortlessly receive the very blessing you have poured your heart and soul into praying for. It's the subtle, insidious erosion of optimism, worn down like a river stone by the relentless current of not yet, replaced by a protective layer of weary cynicism that tries to shield your heart from the inevitable sting of future disappointments. You replay conversations in your mind, analyze past decisions, searching for a reason, a flaw, a hidden sin, anything that might explain why your answer hasn't come. Perhaps you've meticulously followed every piece of godly advice offered, prayed every prescribed prayer with fervent intensity, confessed every known sin you could uncover in the corners of your heart. And still, the landscape of your life looks starkly, stubbornly the same. The barren ground hasn't bloomed. The closed door hasn't creaked open. The desired breakthrough remains an invisible horizon. This is the challenging, raw terrain of faith. It's where intellectual assent to God's perfect timing clashes head-on with the emotional exhaustion of living through what feels like endless delay. It's easy, perhaps even comforting, to believe in God's impeccable timing when you see it working out beautifully for others, when their stories of provision and answered prayer grace your feed. But it becomes profoundly, wrenchingly difficult when your own clock feels not just broken, but simply stopped, stuck on a time that refuses to advance towards the promised future. Recognize this feeling for what it is, not a mark of failure, not proof of inadequate faith, but the raw, honest cry of a heart that simply longs, with every fiber of its being, to finally see God move in a tangible way. It doesn't mean your faith is dead or even dying. It means your faith is being stretched, refined, expanded in ways you never anticipated, perhaps even beyond what you thought you could bear. Instead of chastising yourself for feeling this profound ache, this deep weariness, this honest confusion, bring this very sickness, this deferred hope, directly to God. He is not intimidated by your questions, your frustrations, your weariness, or even the sting of your cynicism. He can handle the mess of your heart. He understands the sickness of a hope that feels deferred, because he walked a path of waiting himself, a path of divine promises that unfolded across centuries. He doesn't ask you to manufacture a false cheerfulness or pretend you aren't hurting. He invites you to lay it all, the disappointment, the longing, the analysis, the fear, at his feet, trusting that even the desolate season of waiting, the very delay that makes your heart sick, has a divine purpose woven into its fabric. In the unexpected wilderness of waiting, perhaps the truest oasis is not the breakthrough you seek, but the deepening intimacy with the one who waits with you. The calendar pages turn, but the promised horizon remains distant. You feel the years stretching, the ache of deferred hope settling deep in your bones, wondering if maybe, just maybe, God forgot the whisper he spoke to your heart. Think of Abraham, called by the voice of the Eternal One. He left everything, embarking on a journey based solely on a word. And what a promise it was! Descendants as numerous as the stars scattered across the night sky. A vast nation born from his lineage. An incredible future painted with divine brushstrokes. But then, the wait began. Not a short pause, but years that blurred into decades. He was an old man, his beloved Sarah barren, their tent a temporary shelter in a land he was told he would inherit but did not yet possess. A nomad, living on the move, the weight of the promise growing heavier with each passing season of barrenness and uncertainty. He wrestled with doubt, visible in the misguided attempt with Hagar, a human effort to force a divine timeline. He made mistakes, stumbled, surely felt the sting of whispers and the loneliness of a promise that seemed increasingly impossible by human standards. His life wasn't a triumphant march or a quick sprint to fulfillment. It was a marathon through the wilderness of uncertainty, under skies sometimes clear with promise, sometimes dark with questions. His story isn't merely about the destination, the miracle birth of Isaac, the eventual inheritance of the land, but profoundly about the journey of waiting itself. The years between the promise and its visible manifestation were not empty voids. They were crucible years, filled with opportunities for Abraham's character to be forged, for his dependence on God to become radical and absolute, for his faith to be tested and refined into something resilient and unwavering. This journey highlights a crucial spiritual insight. God's promises often unfold not on our anxious timeline, but on His perfect, eternal clock. And the intervening time is not wasted. It is actively used by God to prepare the promise and to shape you. Abraham's faith wasn't just proven when Isaac was born. It was proven in the decades he continued to follow God's voice and trust His incredible word. Day after day, step after uncertain step, despite the glaring lack of visible progress. What long journey are you currently navigating? What promise feels delayed, like a seed buried too deep in dry ground? Perhaps it's healing that hasn't come, a door that hasn't opened, a breakthrough that remains elusive. Find encouragement in Abraham's story. Your wait is not evidence of God's forgetfulness or lack of power. It is potentially a sign that He is working on something far grander than you can currently perceive, both in the circumstances surrounding the promise and, more importantly, in you. The wilderness isn't meant to break you. It's meant to build a deeper, more resilient faith, teaching you that God's presence in the waiting is as precious as the promise itself. The wait is not a pause in His plan. It is part of the divine process, shaping your heart to receive what He is preparing. Lean into the waiting. Trust the God who sees not just the finished story, but cherishes every step of the journey. The door remains shut. The silence in the room feels louder than any storm. You replay the events, the unfairness, the betrayal, the moment the lights seem to vanish. Days blur into weeks, weeks into months. Is this it? Has the story stalled? The air is thick with unspoken questions, heavy with the weight of things you cannot change. A confinement not of bars and stone, perhaps, but of circumstance, of waiting, of a future you can't see opening. This stillness, this imposed pause, feels less like peace and more like a prison cell of the spirit. And perhaps, in this quiet, you think of others who knew such waiting. You consider Joseph, a dreamer, marked for greatness, holding visions of stars and sheaves bowing down. But the path twisted, sharp and brutal. Sold by his own brothers, traded into slavery, a commodity in a foreign land. He found a measure of favor, a flicker of hope in Potiphar's house, administering affairs with faithfulness, surely thinking, perhaps this is the turning point. But the path twisted again, falsely accused, his character slandered, his innocence ignored. He was thrown into the dungeon, years stretched out in that dark, forgotten place, not just waiting, but waiting in suffering, in profound injustice, in soul-crushing isolation. Imagine the relentless tide of thoughts. Did God truly see me sold by my brothers? Does he know? Does he remember that I am innocent? Why, after all the dreams, has he left me here, in this pit? From the sun-drenched field where he dreamed, to the dusty pit his brothers cast him into, to the relative comfort of Potiphar's house, and now back into darkness, the confines of the prison. Each step, each cruel turn seemed to carry him further and further away from the glorious future he had glimpsed in those early dreams. It felt like a profound undoing, a divine mistake, a life veering off the map entirely. Yet the ancient scripture whispers a truth that defies the logic of those walls, a truth that lights up the darkness. But the Lord was with Joseph, and showed him steadfast love, and gave him favor in the sight of the keeper of the prison. Genesis 39:21 ESV. God was with him, not just observing from a distance, but present, actively showing him favor even within the confines of his captivity. This reveals a profound, breathtaking truth about God's presence, especially in the waiting. His presence is not contingent on your circumstances. It is not dependent on the speed of your deliverance, or whether the door has swung open yet. He is with you in the pit, even the ones you didn't dig yourself. He is with you in the prison, the emotional, relational, circumstantial prisons that hold you captive. He is with you in the waiting room, the sterile, uncertain space where you hold your breath for the next word, the next answer. He is not waiting for you to get out. He is with you while you are in. Sometimes, deliverance comes not by removing you from the trial, but by walking with you through it. Joseph's long years in the dungeon weren't wasted time, though they certainly felt like it. They were, in God's mysterious economy, holy time. This was where he learned a deeper, more profound patience than the dreamer could ever know. This was where he administered faithfully, managing the affairs of the prison even in the darkness, honing skills he didn't realize he'd need. This was where the rough edges of youthful arrogance were smoothed, where humility was forged in the fire of suffering, where wisdom was gained not from books, but from navigating the treacherous waters of injustice and forgottenness. It was the classroom for kingship, masked as a cell. He was being prepared for something far greater than he could have orchestrated himself, in a place he never would have chosen. The lowest point became the launching pad, the deepest darkness, the prelude to the brightest dawn. Now, consider your own dungeon. Perhaps it's a prolonged illness, a dead-end job, a season of relentless financial strain, a relationship impasse, a silent grief you carry alone. That place of confinement, that feeling of injustice, that hidden struggle no one else sees, it may feel intensely like a detour, like a punishment, like a life put on hold indefinitely. But what if it isn't? What if this seemingly barren, restricted season is, in fact, a sacred space? A space where God is quietly, carefully refining your character, teaching you a resilience you never knew you possessed, cultivating a deeper faith that doesn't require perfect circumstances to thrive. What if He is preparing you, in the hiddenness, for something magnificent you cannot yet possibly imagine? The desert isn't just a place of thirst. It's a place where hidden springs are discovered, where manna falls from heaven, where God's presence is intensely felt in the stripping away of comforts. Don't let the walls of your dungeon convince you that God is absent. Ask Him, right now, in the quiet of this moment, to show you where He is present in your waiting. He may not show you the key to the door yet, but He will show you His companionship. His hand may not be opening the door from the outside as swiftly as you hoped, but His presence is holding you from the inside. Lean into that. Trust that He is doing something holy, even when your view is limited to the shadows on the wall. His companionship in the darkness is not just a possibility. It is a rock-solid promise. You are not alone in the waiting. He is there, shaping the story, even when you can only see the blank page. You wait, you pray. Days blur into weeks, weeks into months, sometimes years. And in the vast, echoing quiet, the most painful question isn't if God heard, but why the answer hasn't come. You sit in the silence, wondering if your prayer was even heard, grasping for a reason, a timeline, anything. The wind taps the window, like God's whisper waiting for your stillness, but the message remains obscured. The hardest part of this season of waiting isn't just the delay, it's the excruciating lack of understanding. If only we knew why. If God would just pull back the curtain, give us a glimpse into the divine strategy, a whisper of the date. But often, He doesn't. We are left wrestling in the why not and the how long, in the murky depths where frustration and doubt find fertile ground. This hiddenness feels like a form of divine indifference, a cosmic game of hide-and-seek where we feel perpetually lost. Yet, as you turn the pages of sacred history, biblical narratives consistently reveal a truth that challenges our limited perspective. God's purposes are frequently far more complex, interconnected, and breathtakingly vast than our finite minds can possibly grasp. His timing isn't a simple equation based solely on your readiness or your need. It's often a symphony involving preparing others, aligning circumstances unseen, or unfolding a larger redemption story you are just a vital, precious part of. Think of the ancient wanderers, the Israelites, waiting decades to enter the Promised Land. 40 years in the wilderness. They couldn't possibly see the full picture of God dealing with the nations already occupying that land, testing their own obedience and faith, or preparing their hearts and the hearts of future generations for the responsibilities and blessings ahead. Their waiting wasn't just a punishment. It was a purposeful preparation woven into a tapestry of divine history. Spiritual insight here is not about demanding an explanation. It's about a profound, quiet surrender. A surrender not just of what we want God to do, but of when and how we think it should happen. It is trusting with a quiet, brave heart that God's perspective is infinite, His wisdom perfect, and His love unwavering, even when His plan for you feels utterly opaque. Instead of agonizing over the hidden why or demanding an immediate answer, there is a path to peace found in acknowledging His sovereignty, in bowing before His inscrutable ways. Whisper it softly in the quiet of your soul, or aloud to the empty room. I don't understand, but I trust that you do. This simple, profound act is a turning point. It shifts the crushing burden from your limited, searching understanding to His boundless, perfect wisdom. It is a declaration that even in the deepest fog, you will walk by faith, not by sight. Sometimes, the most powerful step forward is taken by standing still in surrender. Peace isn't the absence of unanswered questions, but the presence of His truth in the silence. This is the quiet call, to release the need to know and simply choose to trust the one who knows all. The silence stretches thick and heavy around you. Days blur into weeks, maybe months, and you sit in this stillness, underground, like a seed placed gently or perhaps dropped sharply into the dark earth. On the surface, nothing moves. There is no green shoot reaching for the sun, no visible sign of life, no sprout to prove the planting even happened. Doubt taps against the hard shell of your hope, asking, is anything happening at all? This waiting period feels like nothing. It feels like delay, like stagnation, like being forgotten in the unseen. It feels like the world is moving on above ground, bursting with color and light, while you remain hidden in the cold, silent dirt. You cried out for breakthrough, for a clear sign, for the fruit you desperately longed to see. Instead, you were given darkness, stillness, a profound, unnerving lack of outward movement. And anxiety whispers, this is where things die. Fear wraps around your heart like tangled roots. But the truth of the seed tells a different story. Beneath the surface, in the very darkness that feels like absence, crucial work is unfolding. The seed isn't dormant, it's transforming. It's pushing down, not up. Its energy isn't focused on visibility, but on foundation. Roots are reaching, seeking hidden moisture, anchoring the future plant against storms it hasn't even seen yet. Without this unseen, underground labor, the moment a tiny sprout did appear, it would be vulnerable, easily withered by the first heat, easily snapped by the first wind. Growth that is rushed above ground often lacks the deep resilience to survive the real world. Could it be that God is doing this vital hidden work within you right now? In the darkness of your waiting, when nothing seems to be happening, He might be building your spiritual roots deeper than ever before. This unseen season, this valley of silence, is often where God strengthens your faith, not through granting your petition, but through teaching you dependence without the answer. He deepens your resilience by making you wait. He purifies your motives in the quiet, stripping away the need for applause or visible success, teaching you the quiet dignity of simply trusting Him in the dark. Perhaps He is preparing you for the very blessing you are waiting for, building the inner capacity so that when it arrives, it doesn't overwhelm or wither you, but finds a soul deeply rooted and ready. This hidden work is just as critical, perhaps even more critical, than the visible fruit you long for. What feels like delay is often divine preparation. What feels like emptiness is where God is filling you with hidden strength. What looks like death is often the ground from which true life will eventually spring. Recognize that the dark, hidden places of waiting are frequently where the most foundational, life-sustaining growth occurs. Ask Him to show you the quiet work He is doing beneath the surface of your life right now. Ask Him to reveal the unseen roots He is building within you during this sacred, hidden time. Trust that even in the deepest dark, His hand is at work, preparing you for the light. You wait, and the wait becomes a mirror, reflecting not just the desire you hold, but the deep, sometimes hidden fear that your worth is tied to the outcome. You plead for the job offer, the healing report, the word of reconciliation, the answer to the desperate longing for a child. Each passing day feels like a quiet judgment, whispering that you are incomplete, inadequate, or somehow less, until this desired thing manifests. It's the subtle, insidious lie that says, when this happens, then I will be happy, validated, truly valuable. Your identity feels precarious, suspended in the agonizing space between prayer and perceived answer. You watch others receive their blessings and feel a pang, not just of longing, but of personal deficit. Are you being overlooked? Is God withholding because you aren't enough? The wilderness feels vast, and your self-worth seems to shrink with each unanswered plea. But God steps into that wilderness, not with the outcome you crave, but with a profound, unchanging truth about you. He whispers that your identity is not a prize to be won after the storm passes, but a gift already bestowed, anchored in the one who walks with you through the storm. Your completeness is not found in your marital status, your career trajectory, your physical health, or your accumulated achievements. It is found fully and irrevocably in Christ. You are a beloved child of God. You are chosen. You are seen. You are valued. Right now, in this exact moment of waiting, striving, or even failing, your worth is not diminished by the delay, nor is it amplified by the arrival of the desired outcome. Like a tree rooted by the river of God's grace, your stability doesn't depend on the wind of circumstance, but on the unchanging source of your life. This truth is the quiet revolution that transforms the waiting. It shifts the desperate, outcome-focused question, when will I get what I want, to the liberating, identity-focused inquiry, who am I becoming in Him? Regardless of what I get, the greatest spiritual growth might unfold in the season you feel most stunted. Finding contentment and deep peace isn't about ignoring your desires. It's about realizing that your truest, most complete self already exists, secure in God's unwavering love. Take a moment, right now, and speak this truth over the ache. I am loved. I am enough. I am seen by God. Even while I wait, my identity is in Him, not in the answer I seek. Let His view of you redefine the very foundation of how you see yourself. You feel the ache of waiting deep in your bones. Every day stretches out, vast and empty, like a landscape you didn't choose to cross. You look ahead and see only more miles, more uncertainty, and perhaps a creeping fear that the promise you cling to might be lost somewhere in this barren stretch. This season feels like a desert, dry, difficult, a place where resources feel scarce and your own strength feels weaker than ever. Remember the story written in the ancient texts. The Israelites, led out of slavery, weren't taken directly to the land flowing with milk and honey. God led them into the desert. 40 years they wandered in that place of hardship and delay. 40 years of scorching sun, dusty winds, and the constant, gnawing question of, what will we eat? What will we drink tomorrow? But God, their faithful guide, didn't abandon them there. He sustained them in miraculous, undeniable ways. Manna from heaven appeared on the ground each morning, a flaky, sweet bread that met their immediate need. Water gushed from a rock when they were desperate. This desert experience wasn't a detour God forgot about. It was a deliberate, crucial part of their journey, specifically designed to teach them something essential: radical dependence on Him. They couldn't stockpile the manna. If they tried, it would spoil overnight. They had to trust that God would provide each day. This enforced dependence wasn't punishment. It was preparation. How else could they enter a land of abundance and not forget the God who led them there, sustained them, and gave them everything? Your current desert season Whether it's a season of waiting, financial strain, relational dryness, or unanswered prayers, is serving a similar purpose. It's stripping away your self-reliance, the comfortable illusion that you have everything under control. It's forcing you to look upward, not outward or inward, for your daily bread, your daily strength, your daily hope. This discomfort is an invitation to a deeper, more intimate walk with the one who knows the way through the wilderness. It's in this space of not having enough, of not seeing the next step clearly, that you learn to rely on His faithfulness for your every need, rather than your own efforts or resources. What is God patiently, gently teaching you about dependence in your current desert? Can you practice trusting Him just for today's manna, for today's strength, for today's peace, rather than fixating on the entire, overwhelming journey ahead? His provision is often designed to meet you precisely in the present moment, teaching your heart to lean on Him with each sunrise. The waiting isn't empty space. It's sacred ground where dependence is sown. You sit in the quiet, or perhaps the restless noise of your own mind, feeling the heavy cloak of waiting settle upon you. You prayed, you believed, you took steps of faith. And now, the silence stretches, long and unnerving. It's easy to trust when the path is clear, when the answer is a resounding yes delivered quickly. But when the days blur into weeks, months, maybe even years, without a tangible shift, the whispers begin. Soft at first, like a gentle breeze, then growing louder, more insistent, echoing in the hollow spaces of your heart. Did I really hear God correctly? The whisper asks, slyly suggesting your initial conviction was merely wishful thinking, a trick of the light in a moment of desperation. Maybe this prayer isn't God's will at all, another voice pipes up, hinting that perhaps you've been pursuing a misguided dream, knocking on a door God never intended to open. Then comes the insidious thought, laced with shame. Perhaps I'm being punished. It's the age-old human tendency to connect suffering with wrongdoing, forgetting the refining fires God uses or the storms we must simply endure. And the most chilling whisper of all, the one that steals hope's breath, what if nothing ever changes? This doubt plants roots in the present lack and tries to suffocate the future with despair, painting a bleak landscape of unchanging hardship. These thoughts are not foreign to the human experience. They are woven into the fabric of a faith journey lived out in a broken world. You are not alone in wrestling with them. Maybe these very questions have been your companions in the sleepless hours of the night, whispered into the darkness, hoping for a reply. It is vital to recognize this profound truth. Doubt is not the opposite of faith. No, doubt is often a part of it, a fierce, sometimes painful struggle within faith itself. It is the tension between what you believe God can do and the stark reality of your current circumstances. It is the space between the promise and its visible manifestation. Look to the wilderness season of faith, where sustenance is sparse and the next step feels uncertain, or the valley moments, where shadows lengthen and the mountain peaks seem impossibly far away. These are fertile grounds for doubt to sprout, but even in these barren landscapes, faith can deepen. Paradoxical as it seems, strength is often found not in the absence of struggle, but in pressing through it, leaning into the tension. Consider the incredible example of John the Baptist. He was the prophet who leapt in his mother's womb at the presence of Jesus, the voice crying in the wilderness, the one who baptized Jesus and saw the Spirit descend like a dove. If anyone knew who Jesus was, it was John. Yet, later, imprisoned and facing death, perhaps confused by Jesus' methods, which didn't align with a swift, conquering Messiah, John sent his disciples with a question that drips with honest doubt. Are you the one, or should we expect someone else? Matthew 11:3. John, the forerunner, the certainty bearer, allowed himself to voice his uncertainty. This biblical account grants us profound permission. It gives us permission to be honest about our struggles, our confusion, our aching questions. It shows us that even those closest to God can grapple with uncertainty when life doesn't unfold as expected. The spiritual insight here is transformative. Honest doubt, when it is brought to God, can actually strengthen faith. It is like refining gold. The heat of questioning purifies belief, stripping away assumptions and revealing the core trust that remains. Instead of trying to bury your doubts deep within, where they can fester in darkness, choose to bring them into the light of God's presence. He sees them anyway. He knows the landscape of your heart better than you do. Lay out your confusion before Him, like scattered stones. Pour out your fears like a broken vessel. Voice your questions, no matter how raw or unsettling, believing He can handle them. He is not intimidated by your honesty. He welcomes it. He isn't looking for polished, perfect prayers, but for a sincere heart, even one wrestling hard. Imagine it as stepping out onto a storm-tossed sea, biblical imagery. Doubt is the waves crashing over you. Trying to pretend the waves aren't there or stay in the boat alone only leaves you vulnerable. But calling out to Jesus, "Lord, save me," even with a shaky voice, invites Him to meet you on the water. He walks on the very things that threaten to pull you under. Where are doubts whispering in your heart right now? Identify them. Give them a name. Don't push them away. Bring them forward, but not just to wallow in them. Bring them to God. Voice them to Him in prayer, journaling, or simply in the quiet cry of your soul. Trust that He can meet you, even in your deepest uncertainty, in the very eye of your confusion. It is in this vulnerability, this act of laying bare your fragile belief and persistent questions before Him, that He can gently, powerfully begin to strengthen the faith that feels weak. He doesn't condemn the doubt. He invites the doubter into deeper relationship. He takes your mustard seed of uncertain trust and promises to help it grow, even when it feels small and insignificant against the towering doubts. The call is not to eradicate doubt by sheer willpower, but to trust the one who is bigger than your doubts, who holds you even when you feel like you're losing your grip. You sit in the stillness, calendars marked, deadlines looming. The world races past your window, demanding instant replies, express deliveries, immediate results. And you, in your own quiet corner, echo the world's frantic pace, expecting prayers to be answered like urgent notifications. You've sent the request. You've waited the required time. Where is the delivery confirmation? Where is the breakthrough you timed perfectly in your mind? This space of waiting, this tension between your calendar and the unmoving hands of what feels like divine delay, can breed a quiet anxiety, a fear whispered in the dark. Has God forgotten? But God operates on a different calendar, an eternal one, marked not by human deadlines, but by divine design. His timing is perfect, not because it always aligns with your comfort, your convenience, or your carefully constructed timeline, but because it aligns with His ultimate, sovereign, and infinitely wise plan. It's easy to say God's timing is perfect when the answer arrives swiftly, beautifully packaged. The real test of trust comes when his clock seems broken, when the seconds tick into minutes, the minutes into hours, the hours into days, and the answer feels perpetually not yet. Sometimes, the delay is not a sign of his unwillingness, but a testament to his wisdom concerning your readiness. Are you prepared for the weight of the blessing? Is your character sufficiently forged in the fire of patience? Has the soil of your soul been tilled enough to receive the seed he is about to plant? Just as a builder knows the concrete must cure before the next layer is added, God sees the necessary foundation work in you. He delays not to frustrate, but to prepare. Sometimes the delay involves others. Your breakthrough might be intertwined with someone else's journey, their healing, their growth, their own not yet. God is not a solitary craftsman working on one project in isolation. He is the master orchestrator, weaving countless lives, events, and circumstances into a grand tapestry. Your waiting might be the crucial pause needed for another thread to be perfectly aligned. You cannot see the whole design, the complex interplay of cause and effect, readiness and revelation happening across the vast expanse of his creation. And sometimes, he delays because he is orchestrating a complex tapestry of events you cannot possibly see from your limited vantage point. Like a master builder doesn't rush the foundation, skip crucial curing time, or neglect load-bearing walls, God is meticulously constructing something significant. The waiting isn't a sign of his reluctance or his lack of power. It can be a sign of the sheer magnitude of what he is preparing, either for you individually or for the situation surrounding you, perhaps even for generations to come. What looks like inertia from your perspective may be intense, intricate preparation behind the cosmic curtain. What feels like denial might simply be divine design unfolding at the speed of his eternal purpose. This perspective requires a profound surrender of your need for control, a letting go of the reins you clutch so tightly, dictating how and when things should happen. It demands a radical trust in his wisdom, acknowledging with open hands and a willing heart that his plan is not just different from yours, but infinitely, immeasurably better, even when it feels slower, harder, or completely illogical to your hurried mind. Where in your life are you trying to rush God's timing? Perhaps pushing doors that aren't meant to open yet, or feeling despair because his calendar doesn't match yours. Perhaps the most freeing practice is the simple, profound act of handing over your calendar to him. Visually, mentally, spiritually, offering up your anxious timelines, your urgent deadlines, your hoped-for dates of deliverance, trusting that his not yet is just as full of purpose, just as rich with intention, and just as aligned with your ultimate good and his glory as his now. His delay is not his refusal. It is often simply his better way in his perfect time. You sit in the silence, the waiting stretching out before you like an endless road. Your mind isn't here, is it? It's miles ahead, caught in the swirling dust of tomorrow's possibilities. You rehearse the happy endings, when this job comes, when they say yes, when the healing happens. Or perhaps you dread the feared outcomes. What if it never changes? What if I'm always here? What if the answer is no? This constant projection forward, this mental journey into the uncertain future, is a thief. It steals the very breath from your lungs in the now. It robs you of the peace that is available to you, not in the arrival of your desired outcome, but in the present reality of God's presence with you. Think of the wilderness wanderers, their minds fixed on the promised land, yet needing manna, divine provision, each day. Jesus understood this anxious human tendency. He looked at the lilies, the birds, living fully in the provision of today, and told us not to worry about tomorrow. Matthew 6:34. Why? Because tomorrow has its own troubles, its own anxieties that will surely come. But today God provides. Learning to wait well is not about perfecting the art of patience for some distant future reward. It's about cultivating the profound ability to be present in the moment God has given you, right here, right now. It's about finding contentment not because your circumstances are ideal, they often aren't in a season of waiting, but finding contentment in the midst of them. It's a gentle paradox. Surrendering the fight for control over tomorrow allows you to inhabit the calm center of today. This doesn't demand you deny the pain, the grief, the confusion of the wait. It asks you to notice the small mercies whispering in the quiet spaces, the unexpected call from a friend, the beauty of the sky at dusk, the strength to get out of bed this morning, the way the rain cleanses the air. These tiny anchors of grace are available today. Perhaps God isn't asking you to have the faith to see the distant shore, but the faith to simply step into the boat He has provided for today's short journey. What small thing can you find peace or gratitude in right now, right in the middle of your waiting season? Choose to breathe into the present moment. Choose to notice God's hand holding yours, not just in the future you hope for, but in the very moment you are in. Anchor your soul in the present reality of His presence, rather than the turbulent, uncertain landscape of a future outcome you cannot control. He is with you today, and the God who is faithfully with you today will also be faithfully with you tomorrow. The silence stretches, thick and heavy, mirroring the quiet desperation in your heart. You've been waiting for a sign, for an answer, for things to change. And as the days bleed into weeks and weeks into months, your faith feels small, pathetically small, like a fragile, wilting leaf holding onto a branch in a storm. You look around and see others with what appears to be mountain-moving faith, commanding results, their prayers seemingly answered with speed and power. And here you are, struggling just to believe God hears you, wrestling with doubts that whisper you don't have the big faith required. This feeling of inadequacy, of having faith that feels barely there, settles deep within you. But then, a whisper from ancient Galilee reaches across the centuries, a story Jesus told, simple yet profound. He spoke of faith being like a mustard seed, Matthew 13:31-32, the tiniest of seeds, almost insignificant when held in your palm. Yet, within that minuscule form lies an astonishing potential, the power to grow into a large bush, providing shelter and nesting places. He wasn't highlighting the seed's size. He was illustrating its inherent capacity for extraordinary growth. And he was pointing to the soil it was planted in, the environment that would nourish its potential. This brings immense comfort in your season of waiting. Your faith feels small. It feels fragile. It feels barely there. Like that mustard seed, it might seem utterly insignificant against the vastness of your circumstances or the deafening quiet from heaven. But Jesus didn't say you needed a mountain-sized seed of faith. He said faith like a mustard seed. The power isn't in the quantity or size of your faith. It is in the object of your faith. When your small, struggling faith is placed in the hands of an immeasurably great God, it becomes enough, more than enough. It is a seed pregnant with divine potential. And the waiting, the prolonged, difficult season where nothing seems to happen, this is often the very ground God uses to nurture that tiny seed. In the darkness of the soil, unseen and undisturbed, roots grow deep. Resilience is cultivated not in ease, but in the quiet, persistent act of choosing to believe when it's hard. Each day you wake up, bringing your honest weariness and your hopeful yes to God, even when doubt clings like morning mist, is a tiny, powerful act of faith. You are not static. You are growing. The stillness is not stagnation. It is secret strength forming. Don't despise the smallness of your faith in this difficult season. It is not a sign of failure, but a testament to your quiet, enduring trust. Nurture it by bringing your vulnerability, your fears, and your tiny seed of hope to the one who promises that even the smallest seed placed in His care can flourish into something magnificent. How will you acknowledge and nurture that mustard seed of faith within you today, trusting its growth to the gardener of your soul? You waited by the well, expecting a gush of cool water, a rushing river of change. You presented your need, precise and detailed, hoping God would deliver the answer wrapped exactly as you pictured it. But instead of the dramatic breakthrough, the door you hammered on staying stubbornly shut, you notice a tiny crack of light under a different lintel. Or maybe the tangled knot of the main problem persists, yet one loose thread you weren't even focused on suddenly comes free. You find yourself standing in the same landscape of difficulty, yet something profound has shifted within you. A quiet resilience you didn't possess before, a clarity born not of circumstance changing, but of spirit transforming your perspective. This is the unexpected terrain where God often works. His answers don't always arrive with trumpets and fanfare, fitting neatly into our preconceived notions of how divine intervention should look. We can become so fixated on the specific outcome we demanded, so deafened by the silence where we expected a booming yes, that we entirely miss the subtle, surprising ways He is already moving. Perhaps He didn't open the big door, but He opened a small window, inviting you to see a different view or take a different path. Perhaps the external situation remains, yet He has given you a peace that surpasses understanding, an internal fortress where anxiety used to dwell. The answer wasn't the change of scenery. It was the change of heart, the strengthening of spirit. Consider the man born blind in John 9. He didn't just receive a spoken word of healing. Jesus spat on the ground, made mud, dirt, and divine moisture combined, applied it to the blind eyes, and then gave a simple instruction: go, wash in the pool of Siloam. Healing wasn't a passive reception. It involved an earthy process, a requirement of participation, a walk to a specific place. It wasn't the clean, instantaneous miracle the onlookers might have expected. It was messy. It was a journey. It was an answer that came differently than anyone could have predicted, requiring faith in action, trusting the method even if it seemed strange. Are you open to God answering your deepest prayers in ways that don't look like your blueprints? Can you trust His wisdom when His methods are unexpected, when the breakthrough is internal rather than external, or when the answer arrives in stages rather than a single grand finale? Sometimes the greatest miracle is not the removal of the mountain, but the strength given to climb it, or the discovery of a hidden valley along the way. Sometimes the delay is the answer, allowing the soil of your soul to be prepared for what comes next. Ask Him today to give you eyes to see His hand at work, not just in the dramatic displays you hoped for, but in the quiet, unexpected provisions, the small doors opening, the internal shifts that are perhaps His truest, most profound answers during this time of waiting and wonder. The pressure builds. You feel it pressing in from all sides, the edges of your life sharpening under an invisible weight. It's the season where every comfort feels stripped away. Every easy answer dissolves. You sit in the midst of it, perhaps a long-held hope delayed, a needed breakthrough stalled, a path obscured by fog. This isn't just inconvenience, it feels like heat. Intense, unwelcome heat, forcing you to confront parts of yourself you keep hidden, even from yourself. And it is in this crucible, this moment of intense heat, that you stand within an ancient, sacred process. The Bible whispers of God as a refiner, purifying His own like precious metals in the fire. Malachi 3:3, 1 Peter 1:7. Imagine the goldsmith pouring molten gold into a crucible, the furnace roaring. The heat is searing, yet it dawns only one thing. It brings the impurities to the surface. Dross, slag, the things that dilute the metal's purity. They rise to be skimmed away. Waiting seasons, seasons of pressure and discomfort, often feel exactly like this intense heat. They are not arbitrary punishments or meaningless suffering. They are the refiner's fire, carefully calibrated, precisely applied. In this heat, your impurities surface. Perhaps it's the idol of control you clutch, exposed when life spins beyond your grasp. Maybe it's the deep-seated insecurity that surfaces when affirmation is withheld. Doubt, fear, self-reliance masquerading as strength, a subtle, unspoken lack of trust in God's provision or timing. The heat reveals them all, bringing them into the light. But this unveiling is not for condemnation. It is an invitation, a holy showing of what needs to be surrendered, what needs purification, so that you can reflect God's character with greater clarity and radiance. The discomfort is real, the pain undeniable, but the purpose is profoundly redemptive. God isn't destroying you in the fire. He is refining you. He is making you more like gold, pure, resilient, strong, gleaming with His glory, more useful for His divine purposes than you could ever be in your unrefined state. This spiritual insight transforms the waiting, the discomfort. It tells you the heat has meaning. Instead of resisting this intense process, clenching your fists against the flame, open your hands. In the quiet space the waiting creates, prayerfully ask the refiner, "What are you purifying in me through this season? What impurities is this heat exposing? What are you asking me to surrender to your transformative work?" Cooperate with the fire, even when it burns. Trust that this painful process is forging something incredibly beautiful, something eternally valuable, something true, deep within your soul. The refiner is in the fire with you, and His touch is meant for purification, not destruction. The silence hangs heavy. It's not just the absence of sound, but the weight of unspoken prayers, the echo chamber of your own fears in the quiet room. You sit with the waiting, and sometimes the hardest part isn't the delay itself, but the profound, aching sense of being utterly alone in it. It feels like God has turned away, and with that feeling comes the chilling thought that perhaps no one else truly understands this particular wilderness you're walking. You feel isolated, not just from the answer, but from connection, adrift in the uncertainty. This isolation, this perceived forgottenness, is perhaps one of the sharpest thorns in the side of a soul in waiting. You might look around and see lives moving forward, promises fulfilled for others, while your own journey seems frozen, shrouded in a lonely fog. You wonder if you're the only one still sitting here, feeling the chill of hope deferred. Sharing feels impossible. How can you articulate this specific ache, this unique blend of hope and despair, to someone who hasn't walked this path? So, you retreat, building invisible walls, bearing the burden alone, convinced that no one, not even God sometimes, truly sees you in this pit. But this is where the truth, like a sunrise breaking over a long night, gently begins to push back the shadows. The fierce, unwavering reality is this: you are never truly alone in your waiting. Not for a single solitary moment. This isn't a platitude. It is the cornerstone of divine presence. The promise is not, "I will be with you when things get better," or "I am with you if you have perfect faith." The promise is absolute. "I am with you always, to the very end of the age." Matthew 28:20. Always, in the pit of despair, on the parched ground of the desert, in the sterile, uncomfortable waiting room of your life, He is there. He is Emmanuel, God with us. Not observing from a distance, but immersed with you in the mess, the uncertainty, the raw vulnerability of the delay. His presence isn't contingent on your circumstances changing. It is the unchanging constant in a world of shifting sands. He isn't waiting for you to emerge. He's sitting with you in the waiting. And beyond the intimate truth of God's presence, there is another layer of connection, a vast network stretching across time and continents. You are part of a global community of believers. Imagine it, millions upon millions of souls, each navigating their own seasons of waiting, their own unanswered prayers, their own stretches of wilderness. You are not an anomaly. You are part of the universal human and deeply spiritual experience of faith that requires perseverance. Think of that incredible tapestry woven in Hebrews 11, the Hall of Faith. Abel, Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Moses, Rahab, Gideon, Barak, Samson, Jephthah, David, Samuel, and the prophets. What united them? They lived by faith. They faced trials, and many of them did not receive the things promised. They only saw them and welcomed them from a distance. They waited, often for lifetimes, for promises they would never see fulfilled on this side of eternity. Their stories are a thunderous chorus reminding us that waiting is not a sign of failure or forgottenness. It is an intrinsic part of the faith journey. They are a cloud of witnesses surrounding you right now. Their quiet endurance a testament that it is possible to wait and still trust. Recognizing you are part of this lineage, this community opens a door. It whispers a crucial truth. You do not have to carry the weight of your waiting alone. The body of Christ is designed, is intended to bear one another's burdens. Galatians 6:2. When your own hope feels like a flickering wick in a strong wind, someone else can stand beside you, shielding the flame, reminding you of the steadfastness of God's faithfulness. Reaching out is not a sign of weakness. It is an act of profound strength, an acknowledgement of our created need for connection, and an embrace of the divine design of community. Seeking out a trusted friend, confiding in a pastor or spiritual mentor, finding a supportive small group. These aren't just practical suggestions. They are invitations into spaces where burdens can be shared, prayers can be lifted collectively, and perspective can be offered when your own vision is blurred by tears or doubt. Sharing your struggle doesn't diminish it. It distributes the weight, making it less crushing, less isolating. Are you trying to be brave and bear this burden alone? Are you convincing yourself no one would understand? The greatest act of faith in this moment might be the simple, courageous step of reaching out, allowing someone else to stand with you in the waiting, just as God is standing with you. The path you expected to walk vanished. You stand instead in a place you didn't choose, a landscape of waiting that feels less like a sacred pause and more like a desolate wilderness. Anxiety is a low hum beneath your skin, a constant whisper suggesting you've been forgotten, that God's divine navigation system somehow missed your location. This delay, this unforeseen detour, feels like a mistake, a cosmic accident you need to fix or escape from immediately. Doubt takes root, a bitter weed pushing through the cracked earth of your faith. Did God really have a plan? Or was that just something we say? You look around at the Babylon you find yourself in, perhaps a persistent health struggle, a job that feels like exile, a dream that remains stubbornly deferred, a relationship that feels like foreign territory, and it seems impossible to reconcile this reality with the idea of a good, purposeful design. Yet, thousands of years ago, a people stood in a literal land of captivity they did not choose, stripped of their homeland, their temple, their familiar rhythms of life. They were exiles in Babylon. To them, in their despair, God sent words through the prophet Jeremiah, words that on the surface might have felt startlingly detached from their immediate suffering, yet carried the weight of divine promise. I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord, plans to prosper you and not to harm you, plans to give you hope and a future. Jeremiah 29:11. Notice the context. This promise wasn't tied to their instant repatriation. It was spoken into the waiting season, a promise of hope and a future that lay beyond their current unwanted reality. It required them to do the counterintuitive: settle in, build houses, plant gardens, even seek the welfare of the very city that held them captive. They had to live fully in their exile, trusting that God was weaving His larger plan through their captivity. This ancient message pierces through the noise of our modern anxieties. It offers a powerful, often challenging truth. Your waiting season is not a mistake. It is not an oversight. It is not an indication that God has abandoned you or run out of good plans. If He's integrated into His larger, good, and purposeful plan for your life, the delay you experience, the unexpected location you inhabit, the challenge that persists, these are not disruptions to God's plan, but elements within it. He is not just aware of your suffering. He is present in it, working. Your current Babylon, as unwelcome as it is a place where God is actively unfolding His narrative, shaping your character, and preparing you for the hope and future He has promised. It's the quiet paradox of finding purpose in the pause, progress in the stillness. Like a seed buried in the dark earth, unseen, forgotten by the world above, God is at work beneath the surface, nurturing life you cannot yet perceive. Trusting this unseen plan demands more than intellectual agreement. It requires an active choice to lean into God's unwavering character. Can you choose, in the face of disappointment and delay, to believe that He is fundamentally good, that He is utterly faithful, that the God who holds the universe in His hand is meticulously, lovingly working all things, even this hard thing, for the good of those who love Him and are called according to His purpose. Romans 8:28. This isn't about dismissing your pain or pretending the waiting is easy. It's about anchoring your soul to the truth of who God is when your circumstances threaten to drown you in doubt. It's the spiritual discipline of seeking God's welfare in the very city where He has placed you, believing that even in this unwanted location, His purposes are unfolding. Your journey through this wilderness is not directionless. It is guided by a God who sees the end from the beginning, who knows the path you take, and who is perfecting that which concerns you. So look inward. Where does this truth hit hardest for you today? What part of your waiting season feels most impossible to believe is part of a good plan? Identify that raw spot, that point of deepest resistance, and then choose one small, tangible way to act as if you believe His promise today. It might be planting a seed of hope by offering comfort to someone else. It might be building a small structure of faith by investing energy into something positive in your current reality, seeking the welfare of your present circumstance instead of just longing for escape. It might be simply spending 5 minutes in quiet surrender, breathing deeply and affirming, God, I don't see the plan, but I trust you. It's not about fixing everything at once, but about taking one step of faith in the unseen, acknowledging that this season isn't a barrier to God's story, but a chapter He is faithfully writing. It's enough to trust the author, even when you can't see the ending. You return to the window, the place where this journey began, not the same soul who first sat there. The wind still taps against the glass, a familiar rhythm, but its sound carries a different weight now. It's no longer the mournful echo of unanswered prayer, but perhaps, just perhaps, a gentle reminder of a presence you've come to know dwells even in the quietest rooms. You remember the ache, sharp and cold, the feeling of being utterly forgotten, abandoned in the echo chamber of your own longing. The waiting stretched out like an endless desert, each day a grain of sand sifting through weary fingers. You felt confined, like Joseph in the dungeon of delay, or uncertain, like Abraham walking towards a promise seen only in the far distance. You wondered if the seed of your hope was buried too deep to ever break the surface. But something shifted in the silence. It wasn't a sudden, dramatic rescue, but a slow, tender unfolding. The waiting room, once a place of torment, began to reveal itself as a sacred space. It became less about the empty void and more about the subtle invitation to lean, not on your own strength or understanding, but fully, completely, into God Himself. The pause, the delay, the gnawing uncertainty, these weren't punishments, but unexpected classrooms. You learned a patience that wasn't passive endurance, but an active, moment-by-moment choice to trust, a relentless leaning into the one who is steadfast. The silence itself changed character. It was less His absence and more a call to stillness, a chance to listen past the noise of your fears and desires to the quiet stirrings of His Spirit within you, like a hidden stream whispering beneath the surface. You discovered in this fertile quiet that your identity is not rooted in the fleeting circumstances of when your situation changes, but is secure, immovable, anchored firmly in who holds you. This dependence you once feared wasn't weakness, but the very posture that allowed His immense, perfect strength to flow into your fragile humanity. Doubts still whisper, insidious and persistent, like shadows lengthening at dusk. But you've learned to hear His truth speaking louder, resonating in the depths of your being, a sound more ancient and enduring than any fear. His presence, once sought desperately in dramatic signs, is now recognized as a constant companion, a quiet warmth in the loneliest moments, like oil in a lamp, keeping the flame alive through the long night. The answer to your prayer may still be unfolding, like a bud slow to open. The door you've been knocking on may not yet swing wide. But look closely. You are not the same person who sat by that window all those seasons ago. The journey through the wilderness refined you, not because you were unworthy or needed fixing, but because you are precious, a beloved child being shaped and prepared for the harvest. You are stronger now, deeper, more resilient, more dependent on the only one who is truly, reliably dependable. Even when the outcome remains veiled, God is irrevocably present. He was never silent, even when you couldn't hear Him above the clamor of your distress. His love is a constant melody, a song that often requires the quiet, uncluttered spaces of waiting to be truly heard. Return to that window now, not with the weight of despair, but with a quiet confidence that transcends what your eyes can see. Lean your forehead against the cool glass. The silence isn't empty, it is full. Even now, even here, in the middle of your unfinished story, His presence is singing over you. It is a lullaby of peace, calming the restless soul, a hymn of promise echoing in the empty spaces, a symphony of unwavering love pouring out over you. You are not waiting in vain. You are waiting with Him, and this waiting with Him, this walking by faith and not by sight, this quiet dependence in the midst of the unknown, this is the essence of the journey. It is in these hidden seasons, these chapters filled with quiet growth and unseen battles, that God is writing the holiest stories. Your story, woven with threads of doubt and faith, struggle and surrender, waiting and discovery, is being authored by the one who knows the end from the beginning. They didn't see the end, but they trusted the author, and that was enough.